Often we're taught you need to understand why you want to achieve something. The stronger your why, the more motivation you have to achieve your goal. But do you really need to understand why? And does this just make it longer and more difficult to achieving your goal?
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to an On the Couch episode of the Share.care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued, and heard gives you a foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everyone. Because in today's world, it's in your own selfish best interest to help others. What I want to talk to you about today is when I think about my life and things that I've achieved. I mean, when I go back to my early 20s, my life was a little bit juxtaposed. I would go out and party a lot. I was living in Perth at that time, and frequenting nightclubs was one of my favorite things to do. Would go out at night and be up dancing. I would be up on the stage, dancing away, swinging away, arms in the air, just going crazy. I'd also, at that time too, I did drink a lot. Um, I partied pretty hard, and yeah, there was a period in my life where I actually drank, 2 bottles of vodka a day plus some Sambuca on top of that, which is an extreme amount of alcohol. But I think maybe because I was dancing all the time as well, maybe I sweated it out. But then again, other times when I wasn't at the nightclub, really didn't seem to have much of an effect. I think my body just got used to it. God knows what it did to my liver. Good thing those days are in the past. But what I did notice is, like, we'd be going out and I'd have a lot of fun. One of my favorite haunts was, there was a club in Perth called DV8, which was, for me, I loved it because it was kind of a classy joint, and maybe I'm a little bit snobbish, but I like the fact that to get in, you couldn't get in with jeans on. You had to wear, slacks, and you had to be dressed nicely, otherwise they wouldn't let you in. And I liked that. And the other thing I liked about it as well was the bar that it had. It was fluorescent, and it was a fluorescent green, and green's my favorite color, so that's obviously something that I was popular with. But it was it was also, it had this thing where if you put something on the bar and then you took it off again, it leave a shadow. So if you put your hand down on the bar and you pulled your hand away, there was the shadow of your hand, and it slowly faded away. And when you got a drink, the coaster and the glass, when you lifted it up, it left a nice little shadow. I thought that was pretty cool. One of my fond memories from when I was younger. So I partied pretty hard. But at the same time too, on the other side of it, I was also quite fascinated with how your mind worked. And I spent a lot of time, like my holidays, I would actually, rather than go for a holiday somewhere, I would actually, well, I did go somewhere, but rather than taking your traditional holiday, going and mucking around, that kind of thing, or traveling to places and looking at that, I actually used all my annual leave and holiday leave and even sick leave sometimes. I was sick, so I had to go to a seminar. Which is what I did. I went to seminars. So I went to all these different seminars um, to learn how your mind worked. And I went for everything from Tony Robbins type, those type of seminars where I actually flew across the country, because I was in Perth. This was in Melbourne, so I flew across the country to attend this Tony Robbins, I think it was a 2-day course. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was 1 day. But I remember um, that there was just this massive crowd, and it was very rah rah rah, and you get in, and it's just constantly up. You're rubbing, get you to stand up and rub each other's shoulders and dance around and jump up and down and get all super pumped up. And I think I always found it amazing or funny, ironic. Maybe that's a better word, ironic. That when Tony Robbins talked about being called Mr. Motivation, he didn't kind of like that, but it was like, did you sit in one of your seminars, Tony? They were very much rah-rah. And they were very good too, obviously. But I would also, I remember there was one time there was a course, I studied neurolinguistics, and that course was, was very different from Tony Robbins' course. It was very in-depth, and that went for a week. So I took a week of annual leave to fly and do this course. And so we spent the whole time doing that particular course. Well, I spent my leave doing that course, and I would do that. There's many times where I did a number of those courses and using my leave to try and understand how the mind works. And I studied hypnosis, I studied neurolinguistic programming, as I mentioned, and from up to train the trainer. So there was a lot of things like that I studied. Now, I never wanted to be a motivational speaker. That wasn't my thing. I was just fascinated with how the mind worked, and I did actually enjoy helping people improve their life as well. And I just found that I had this natural ability to listen to people and help them do things that little bit better, and with troubles that they might be facing, particularly guys. I was able to talk with guys, and I think I didn't have a problem sharing my own experiences. So I would talk about my experience. I think that helped them open up and excuse me, open up and share their experiences as well, for creating a safe space. It wasn't like they're being quizzed or anything like that. It was like, oh, this is what's happened to me, and all of a sudden they would share that those experiences as well. And there was a period in my life where I was doing training, so I was teaching, and wasn't doing it full time, but just there was courses that were run from time to time, commercial management, project management, those type of courses. And what I tried to do with those courses was I tried to make it relatable. A lot of times I threw out the course material. Well, didn't literally throw it out, but I rarely followed the course notes because I found a lot of it was pretty dry and pretty boring. And I'm sure you've all been to one of those courses where it's just like, oh my God, I want to stab a pencil in my eye. This is so boring. And I hated those courses. So I wanted to make ones that people attended. The attendees of my courses that I was teaching, that they felt that they got something out of it, they enjoyed it. And so I would then try and make it more practical, more real life. So I'd follow the notes to a degree as much as I needed to for them to pass the course. But instead, I tried to make it more about practical real life experience. And I would do that by relating it to real life experiences. Even if it was a commercial management course, I found ways of relating the information to how we experience real life, and how we experience relating to each other, from an intimate partner relationship, to friends, to relating to business, those kind of things, and making it real. I think it made it more engaging because I had a lot of people thank me for those courses, and many years later too. I remember I was standing on the side of the road, and I was standing on the side of the road because my car had been driven into, and I had a Range Rover at the time, and someone had driven into the back. It wasn't bad, but it was, damaged it. So I was standing, the assessor at the panel beater was looking at it. I was standing on the side of the road, and this really big American style, it was a Chevy pickup truck, big Julies on the back, black. The windows were tinted black. It was the four-door version, so big cab, this massive, and it caught my eye. And I'm looking at this thing come down, and I'm staring at it. And just as it reached me on the road, all of a sudden the brakes slammed on, literally slammed on, left these black tire marks on the road. Comes to a halt. Guy gets out. He's big burly guy. He kind of looks familiar, and I hadn't always been the most tactful person in all circumstances. So I know I piss people off from time to time in some of the ways I've dealt with situations in the past. And so this guy's walking towards me. He's looking familiar. And I'm thinking, oh my God, have I pissed him off somewhere? And he calls out and he goes, Damien! I was like, holy shit, he knows my name. And so he's coming up to me. He goes, Damien, I just saw you on the side of the road. I wanted to say thank you. I did that project management with you 2 years ago. It's the information you shared has changed the way the business runs. And he was, shook my hand and just wanted to say thank you. And I was like, wow, how cool is that? I'm still stoked when I think about that story. It was pretty cool. This guy coming to a screeching halt just to say thank you for a course that I taught him 2 years earlier. So that was quite humbling. And it also stroked my ego a bit. And, I think we should acknowledge our ego too. And so there was, that was an experience I had. Also to, even just in general, when I was walking, because I did a lot of work in construction. And so I'd be a lot of times, senior position, walking around, assessing things, checking things are okay, that kind of thing. But I'd always try and relate to people that were there and tell a funny story or a joke or something to just to make people feel welcome and wanting to be there. And I remember, and there was a couple of funny videos I would also show. There were little YouTube videos, and one of my favorite was Tale of Two Brains. If you, look it up, it's Mark Gungor video. It's hilarious. It goes for about 14 minutes, and it's about the difference between the way men and women think. And so I'd show that video quite often. And I remember I was doing an inspection of it was a 22-story high-rise and walking around, and I was showing this video with a group of people, and everyone departed. We all had a giggle and went their own way. But there's one guy that hung around. He was, again, big burly guy, tats on. Looked rough and tumble type guy, and I was like, okay. But I looked at him, and he was kind of frozen and a bit. There was something in his eyes, and his eyes were starting to water up, and I was going, oh, something's going on here. And so I asked, you okay? And he's like, and he blurted out about him and his wife's marriage, and that they were having problems and they were struggling, and he didn't know what to do. So I asked him, do you love your wife and do you want to try and save your marriage? And he was like, yeah, I do. I really don't know what to do. So I said, well, what I suggest, I'm going to send you the link to this program, the Mark Gungor program. He has a program called Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage, and it's hilarious. It goes for about 4.5 hours. It's really, really funny, but there's a lot of really good knowledge in there as well about relating to your spouse. And he covers everything from just communication to sex to how to not kill each other, how to maintain the passion in long-term marriage, that kind of thing. And it's a really, really good program. So, and I said to him, I said, what I suggest you do is you watch this in a place where your wife's going to walk past. Now, she's going to ask, odds on she's going to ask, what are you watching? So just say, look, a friend has suggested that, he said, well, I said, first say, I love you. I know we're having problems, and a friend has suggested that I watch this, and maybe that might help with our marriage and find our way back together again, and that emotional connection. And I said, then shut up. Don't say anything. Don't say anything beyond that. If she's interested, she might watch it with you or talk with you or whatever. But if she's not interested, don't worry about it. Just you watch it, see what you can get out of it, and take it from there. I bumped into him. I think it was at least 2 months. It was somewhere around the 2-month area, or 2-month duration that I had first seen him, and he was a changed man. Completely different. He said, that their marriage, it was like they were teenagers again. They're always sneaking off to be intimate together. It was just such a cool story to hear that, he had this, wanted to fix his marriage and didn't know what to do, and then found a way of achieving that. So that was the objective, and it was just just really cool to, again, to be part of that and help him with that. And as I look around at my life and how I've done things like that, I mean, one of the things, I mean, I'm quite willing to do things that, are a little bit outside of the norm. I mean, I'm walking around a construction site showing videos of how to, men and women think differently and having a bit of a giggle. And I think that come from when I was young. My mum was pretty open about how, I mean, we grew up Polish Catholic. I mean, I was Polish, Ukrainian background, mostly Polish. My grandmothers were, certainly instilled the religion. I know my dad said, his dad, my grandfather, said, whatever your mum says, you do to the children. And my grandmother went to church, it was a Catholic church, and both my dad and his sister, my auntie, went to church on Sundays, Catholic church. So I had that Catholic upbringing. But my mum was a bit more open, maybe because her mum was Polish, so Catholic, and her dad was Ukrainian, which I think is Lutheran. I'm not sure exactly what the religion was there at that time. Anyway, so my mum was more open about that. And growing up, when we did the Catholic thing, but then after my parents split up, my mum looked at different things. So when we did, we went to we went to different types of churches. We looked at synagogues, temples, mosques. We explored those things, and so that was something that I was never afraid to explore the different options there. And similar, I mean, had a number of friends who were quite religious, and they'd invite me to come to their Bible studies or whatever it was that they were studying, if it was one of the different religions. And I'd come along. I was genuinely interested in, and I found it a lot that I could learn from. It was interesting how much was similar across all the different religions when you looked at it at a high level. I mean, thou shalt not kill, don't commit adultery, don't steal. Those are ingrained across all the religions. But and so I would do that, and I enjoyed it. I had a bit of fun too. I mean, it was one class where we were at, and I was looking up, just obscure quotes, and this was a Christian one, and there was a quote that I found that it was in the Bible that said, "It's better for a man to live. It was better for a man to live in a hole in a desert than with a complaining wife." And I showed this to the girl that I went with, and she wasn't very happy about that, but I had a giggle. I thought it was funny. But I think, this understanding of how the mind works, a lack of prejudice to new ideas, it was like always open to new learnings, the different mythologies and the religious experiences. I mean, it really opened me to question how, mainstream thinking. I mean, just because some authority figure says this is how it is, doesn't mean for me that I go, well, okay, I accept that. It's like, well, is it working, or can we do it better? And I think that's, from my perspective, where can we do it better was where that was a driver for me, because I really hate inefficiency. It's like, it drives me insane to do a repetitive task over and over again. It's like, how can we eliminate this? How can we do this faster? How can we get there quicker? That's something that's always been driving me. It is like a really, if I have to do a repetitive task over and over again, it becomes almost like a strong pain in my body. It's just like, it's really frustrating. Unless I'm doing it for relaxation, like I mow the lawns now. I never used to. I used to have people mow the lawns for me. At the moment, I do that, but I use that as kind of a meditation time now. That's a conscious decision. It's like, oh, how do I use that as relaxation? But there's a lot of, I said, normally I would find another way of doing it so I don't have to do this repetitive task. And it is quite painful inside. Maybe that's part of my, I don't know, deep psychological issues maybe that I've got. But they're my issues, and I'm sure that I'll deal with that and come to peace with that at some time. And so I couldn't help myself mapping out how to do things better. And that was one example of that was, again, back in construction. I was using this software to do quality assurance on a building, and there was just so many tasks that didn't need to be there. It was like to open the camera, you had to press this button and then this button and then this button, and it was just like had to go through this process. I said, we can simplify this, and being the anally retentive person that I am, and I started taking notes as to how this software could be better each step of the way. And so I ended up with a 43-page report showing, okay, this is how you make it better. And I was having coffee with a friend who's a venture capitalist, and I was telling him about this, and he got really excited. He was like, he was going, oh, tell me more. What do you mean? And I'm explaining, oh, this is what I did, and I did that. And then all of a sudden he switches, he goes, okay, I'll set you up. I'm going, what? He goes, I'll set you up. What do you mean you'll set me up, is what I'm saying. And he goes, no, I'll set you up with the senior management of this software company, and you can explain what you've told me to them in more detail if you want. And I went, yeah, I'm happy to do that. It's an experience. I can learn from that. And he did. And so I ended up I thought it was a half-day meeting, but it was going to be a half-day meeting, and it ended up being a meeting for a day where I explained, went through what I've done, how to improve it, how this makes that better. And they were taking all these notes, and then it was within 6 months, majority of what I presented to them was in their software, which was, I was quite proud of that. And the thing that I didn't really think through at that time, because it was a friend, and I just thought, oh, I'm helping out, didn't really think it through commercially. Eventually, that software got sold to Oracle for $1.6 billion. And I didn't charge for the bit. Not obviously, I wouldn't be entitled to $1.6 billion, but there's a lot that I added to the value of that software. But I don't look at that badly. It's just one of those experiences. So I would think a lot about how we achieve goals. This is what this is about. How do we achieve goals? And like most of you that have studied goal setting, there are a number of different ways, all similar. I mean, you've probably heard of the SMART principle. Make your goals, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. I struggle with that. I could never do it. I'd make these goals, and it's like, okay, I'll make it specific. I'm going to do this by this date. I can measure it. It's attainable. Yeah, I think I can learn to do that. And this is the date that I'm going to achieve it by. And I just struggled doing the SMART process. It was just really, I don't know. The whole process seemed to be overly convoluted to get to an outcome, to get to a goal. And then the other one was, the common that's taught is know your why. Work out why do you want it. That'll give you the stronger your why, the more motivation you'll have to achieving it. And again, I just really struggle with that. I was like, okay, what is my why? Why do I want this? Why do I want it? I know I want it, but why do I want it? And I'd be spending out trying to work it out, and I was like, oh, I was doing my head in. Do I want it because of this? Do I want to? And it was just really, really frustrating, I found. And again, I didn't do it very much. And I thought, well, maybe if I help develop something. So I came up with my own version of the why, which I called my 3WD plan. And it was something that I was, even trying to share with other people to help. I thought if I, because you learn better when you teach. I thought, well, I'll come up with this plan, let's teach others and see if, that helps me understand. So my 3WD plan was, what do I want? When do I want it? Why do I want it? And what will I do to get it? So I'd be like, okay, I want this, and I want it by this time, and this is why I want it. Again, struggling with the why. And what will I do to get it? These are the actions I'll take to get it. And again, I even my own plan I struggled with. It's like, why am I struggling with this? It was really doing my head in. It was just frustrating. And it was more frustrating because when I was looking back at the things I've done, I've done a lot. I've achieved a lot. I haven't gone through this extensive goal setting plan. I haven't done the SMART, rarely did the SMART principle. Even when the times I did do it, I didn't do it very well. The why, again, I tried it. As I said, just didn't do it that often, but I still achieved a lot. And I was thinking back, and I'm going back, okay, what are the key things that I've done? And well, one, there's a lot that I've done, but it was like, okay, I joined the army. Why, what was that? What was that process that I did that? I made a decision I was going to join the army. Well, that decision was made for me, or wasn't made for me. I made it, but that the situation that I was in was I didn't want to be at school. Didn't like school. Like studying, just like learning. I didn't like learning what they told me I had to learn. I wanted to learn the things that I was excited about. And so I was like, okay, I can't leave school. My dad said I'm not allowed to leave school unless I have a job. Well, about 2 weeks later, the army recruitment people come and did a presentation at a recruiting presentation at my school. I was like, cool, I'm getting out of here. I joined the army and I'm out of school, and that's what I did. And it was as simple as that. And I guess there's a why there. I didn't want to do school, and I just wanted to get out. So it was pretty simple. Then when I'm in the army, again, similar process. It was like, okay, I'm in the army, running around. Obviously, I hadn't thought through what being in the army was like, because I didn't like running around the jungle that much with guns and things like that. And so I went, okay. At the end of basic training, there's a number of key good jobs that you can get, like signals and transport. I mean, transport's a good job. Back then, I thought it was a good job. I shouldn't say that, because there's a lot of people working in transport that actually do work really hard, and it's really, really necessary. So now that I've spoken that out loud, I'm going to apologise profusely for all the people in the military that are working in transport, because you provide a vital logistics. So I deeply apologise for that. But so they were the good jobs. It was like signals, transport, and a couple of others. I can't remember what they were. I didn't want to go into armored, because I was told driving a tank was like, you take a bucket, fill it full of put diesel in it, swish it around, tip the diesel out, put the bucket over your head, and then run down a hill with the bucket over your head. And that's what driving a tank is like. So that didn't appeal to me. There was one job that the other thing I recognized was only a limited amount of good jobs. And so what that meant was, if you didn't get one of those good jobs, you would go to infantry. And that's where I didn't want to go. And so I knew that I didn't want to go there, because I didn't like running around the jungle or the bush or whatever. When we say the bush, it sounds like we're running around one bush doing ring a rosy. There's lots of bushes. So I was mature enough to recognize that I wasn't mature enough, or I hadn't displayed enough skill to get one of the good jobs. So I was likely to go to infantry, which I didn't want to do. And there was one job that no one was applying for, and I thought about that, and I looked at that job and I went, okay, this was a chef's position. Now, my first motivation was girls like guys that could cook. So I thought that was a good motivation. The other motivation was I could, learn some exotic foods. That would be fun. So I can impress other people with my cooking. And my third reason for getting it was, if I got out of the army, I'd have a skill to rely upon. So that was, my motive. I was 18. My motivation is, chasing girls, being able to impress people around me, and then maybe think about, a career or life after that. And so that was the decision-making process. It was like, okay, I'm going to apply for that. So I got the job as a chef, and I went to the chef school in the army, which is quite exotic, actually. You're taught to cook for officers and banquets. That's how you're taught. And I know, that's not the common thing, but there is a lot of cooking that is done, in mass cooking, which is, that's required, but you're actually trained to be quite exquisite in your cooking, if I can say that word correctly. And while I was at the School of Cooks, there was a guy who was in the course with me. He got asked, do you want to go to Perth? And he'd just come from Perth. He said, no, I don't want to go back to Perth. I said, I'll go. My motivation for that was, it was further. I'd never been to Perth, long way from home. Didn't want to be near home. And that was as simple as that. I just blurted out, and I go. And they looked at me and said, okay, you can do the psychological test, and if you pass, you can go. Like, cool. I didn't really give a thought about the psychological test and what that meant, but as it turned out, I did do the test and I did pass it, but as it turned out, the position that they were looking for was at the SAS, which is Australian Special Forces. So I got to travel to the Special Forces base, be posted at the Special Forces base, do everything. So jumping out of aeroplanes, rock climbing, going on different exercises using all different kinds of weapons, but without having to run around the bush all the time. So that was really cool because I got to do cooking most of the time, and then I go on these exercises where I do all these really cool, fun stuff. So that was that motivation. That's how I achieved those things. But the same token, it was like I never really thought about the why and why would I do that? And it did. As the more I'm studying, this goal setting, it's like why these things I didn't really get into the why. Why do I, why do I need to know my why? And that's what I started to ask. I was like, because I could see different points of view and maybe because of the background that I had, I did start to ask, why do I need to know why? And I think that when I started to ask that question, I think that opened up my reticular activating system to new ideas, to new information. And your reticular activating system is really critical because it filters. There's a whole podcast we'll talk about reticular activating system, and how it's important to understand how that works and how to program it, because the reticular activating system will determine what you see. And so I started to see things a little bit brighter. And or not brighter. I used to see things that I didn't see before because I started to ask the question, why do I need to know why? And I'm sitting in my car one day. I remember sitting there and I just started the car, and then I thought, I've got a basic understanding of how an internal combustion engine works, but I really don't understand why it all works, and how all this thing works. But I can still drive a car from A to B. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, I don't understand why the economy works, but I've had lots of jobs, and I'm able to earn money, and participate in the economy. I can buy and sell stuff and that kind of thing, but I don't understand how it works. I don't understand why it works. And then I went even bigger. Well, I don't understand why the Earth spins around the sun, but I still can live on the planet and enjoy it. So I thought about that more from the perspective of I remember the teachings from peak performance courses that I'd done. And I'd learned during those courses the difference between conscious understanding and unconscious action. And it's really important to know that your conscious mind can't act. There's too many inputs, way too many inputs for your conscious mind to think about for you to act. Action has to come from your unconscious mind. And let's say, when you think about that, if you want to pick up your mobile phone or pick up anything, pick up a pencil, you can't consciously pick up. You cannot think of all the muscles you need to move to then go and pick up that pencil. You consciously think you want to pick up the pencil. Unconsciously, the actions happen. So I was thinking about that, going, well, okay, all I've done is I've chosen I want to pick up the pencil. And then that sets in train a whole bunch of things that allows me to pick it up. I'm not consciously aware of it. I don't know why it all works. It just does. And I thought from that point, after you choose what you want, your unconscious mind takes over and it does the rest. Like, okay, I want to pick up the pencil. And all of a sudden, all these things all these things fall into place to enable you to pick up the pencil. And all you have to do, you don't have to understand why. You don't have to understand why you want the pencil to pick it up. You just pick it up. So I want to pick it up. And that was really important to think about that from the perspective, okay, the difference between conscious understanding and unconscious action. And you've probably all experienced that to some degree. Think about this. Have you ever had an experience where you thought you really understood something? You go, yeah, I really understood. And then you went and did it and you didn't do too well. And you've probably had the other experience where you thought you didn't understand something. And then when you went and did it, you actually performed a lot better than you thought you could. You really surprised yourself. And that's the difference between conscious understanding and unconscious action. There's things going on unconsciously that enabled you to perform really well that you weren't consciously aware of. And that's when I went that step further and I thought, well, this is the distinction I need to make. Do I want to understand or do I want to perform? And with my goals, it wasn't about understanding how I achieve my goals. I really don't care. I don't care how my car runs. I don't care why the earth spins around the sun. It doesn't matter to me to live my life. I just enjoy living my life. And so that's when I went and said, well, okay, when I looked back at what I was doing, all I was doing was choosing what I wanted. I was choosing to be in the army. I was choosing to be a cook. I was choosing to go to Perth unknowingly to the SAS. Um, so I was just choosing what I wanted. That's all I was doing. I wasn't understanding all majority of things except for the couple of times where I tried the smart thing and the why do you need you to understand it. Um, I I was actually just choosing and doing it because that's what I saw myself as. And that was the other key that when I thought back about that, it was like, oh, I see myself in the army. It wasn't very clear at that time. I really didn't focus on a lot. I was just like, yeah, I see myself in the army, running around, playing with guns, traveling around the world. That sounds cool. And I saw myself there, and I saw myself going through the process of getting there because as I there was a process I had to go through, fill out an application form, had to do that. So I saw those things that I needed to do. Not, some of it wasn't too detailed. It filled in as we went forward, which is also important to recognize. You don't have to have every step of the way mapped out to achieve your goal. That's another podcast. We'll get into that later. Um, and then and the more I thought about that, I just simply had it clear and in my mind. And as I recognize that again, my reticular activating system has opened up and I've noticed other things along those lines. So before it's all about smart goals and why, because that's what my reticular activating system was noticing. And then now that I thought, well, why do I want it? I don't know. I don't need to know. I didn't care. Just felt right inside of me. And that's when things opened up, that I saw things that I hadn't, or become aware of things that I wasn't aware of before, because a whole new level of, or whole different way of achieving goals was achieved. And that's where I remember I was reading a Time magazine interview with Nigella Lawson. And she was asked what was her inspiration in this interview. And her response was that she goes, I don't know why. She goes, I just remember when I was 16 years old that she said she remembered when she was 16 years old, she had this vision of herself as an Italian cooking goddess. She didn't know why. She just had this vision of what she wanted to be. And from that vision of what she wanted to be, she accomplished massive amount. And that also, from my perspective, I've got a favorite audio that I love, audio book. It's Wayne Dyer's How to Be a No Limit Person. I've listened to that when it was on cassette. I've listened to it over and over again. There's so much in it. But there was part, like anything, when you're ready, that's when you see or hear or experience what you need to experience. And I was listening to it after having this revelation. And Wayne talks about how a neurotic needs to understand, whereas a fully functioning person knows from within. That was really interesting. Like a neurotic needs to know why, but a fully functioning person just knows. They know within. And he relays the experience of, he was walking down the beach, and as an experience of walking down the beach, and someone goes, "Oh, why are you walking down the beach?" And he goes, "Because I want to." And and they ask, well, how far do you think you'll walk? He goes, I don't know, until I feel like stopping. And they say, well, what if you get all the way down there and you don't want to walk anymore? And he says, well, I'll catch a taxi back. I thought that was pretty profound. I had a giggle when I was listening to that, because it was like, yeah, you mean, one, you don't have to understand all the steps in front of you, which was an important thing. But two, the why wasn't important. You knew from within. And when I thought about, whether I'd thought about it deeply or not, like joining the army wasn't really a deep thought. That was like, I want to get out of school. I want to get out of here. I don't want to be here. And that was as far as it got. It was just that moment. That's where I wanted anything. And the army was an opportunity to leave school. And so I finally let go of this whole goal setting thing of, SMART goals. Why do you need to understand it? Action is an unconscious function. Why is a conscious function. I didn't need to know why. I don't care why. Why is if you want to consciously understand, yes, that's good. I mean, and some people need to do that. They need to understand the why and work it all out, and that is completely fine if that's the way that works for you. If you need to understand why, that's important. The distinction I wanted to make was you don't need to understand why to act. You don't need to understand, why all your different muscles work to turn the keys in your ignition to start your car. You don't need to know that. You can just start your car. And so that's where, for me, because again, efficiency is just this thing. I didn't want to be spending all this time trying to work out how, to achieve my goals, or why do I want this goal to get motivated? Well, I want it. I just want it. I do. And so I'm going to get it. And that's my attitude. It was like, um, I realized that you can't consciously achieve your goals. To act is an unconscious function. And so I don't need to understand why all these things. I just need to know that I want it. And my motivation came from seeing in my mind that this was me. This was me. Whatever that future thing that I wanted, this was me. So I would then just take the action because I saw myself as that. I'd take those actions to get there. And this is where, for me, it really sped up the ability to achieve goals. It was like I stopped worrying about, I stopped writing out for hours, because that's a lot of time trying to work out why. Why do I want this? Why don't I? It's like, I just do. I want it. And this is the process that I did. I chose what I want. I want this. I pictured it clearly in my mind. I saw myself as that. So I just go, and it wasn't really even, I didn't have to really do it. As soon as I said I want that, it was just like, I want it. I didn't sit there trying to visualize it in great detail. I just wanted it. And so I just, yep, I want that. And if I was ever getting, bit of lack of motivation, I'd go, okay, I want this. How does that look? And all of a sudden I'd start to get that motivation again. And this is where you can, and a way that you can do this, if you find yourself practicing, if you find yourself procrastinating, can guarantee if you pay attention to your thoughts, you've actually stopped thinking about what it is you want. You're thinking about something else. We often do that, where we want something, and then we want something else. Usually, as is the case here, we binge watching some show on a streaming service, because that's what we want to do. What we want is, what we originally wanted has changed. What we want to do now is binge watch something on TV. And that's where, if you switch back and go, well, actually I want this, all of a sudden binge watching isn't that motivating anymore. It's actually starts to become painful. You go, actually, I want this. This is what I want. And you're going, oh, then you've got a conflict going. You're not congruent anymore. All of a sudden it becomes uncomfortable. And if you just say, I want this, and all of a sudden that becomes, I choose this. Choose is a good word. If you say I choose, it gives you more responsibility. It works really well. Instead of I want this, try I choose this, because then it's like, oh, hang on a minute. I choose this result and I'm watching TV. They don't align. I think I need to do something different. And when you do that, it really works. So an example of this is, let's say you want to drink water. Right now, say to yourself, I want to drink. I want a really thirst quenching drink, and I really want that drink. I'd like it. That's what I really want right now. And as you do that, you might find that you're starting to get a little bit thirsty, and that's how that works, because all of a sudden, unconsciously, all the triggers happen to make you motivated to do what you need to do. You say, oh, I'm thirsty. I want to drink. All of a sudden, you're going to go and get a drink. So if you do want to understand, how things work, I mean, why is a good question. Why is this happening? And that can be really good. If that's what you want to do, you can understand. If your goal is to understand how something works, then why is a great question. Definitely do that. If your goal is just to achieve what it is you want to achieve, why is not necessary. They're two separate things. So you need to separate. Am I wanting to understand why I want to do this so I can, have a deeper understanding of the reason it's important to me, or do I just want to get there? And for me, it's that I'm a kind of get there type of person as fast as I can, as quickly as I can, and then next time I'll do it even faster. And so for me, it was like you can skip this whole why step. You can choose what you want. You get that clear in your mind. You picture yourself as that person, and really, I mean, initially, yes, you might have to do that. I don't even do that now. It's like I want this and away I go. It just happens. It just literally unconsciously it's taken care of, and I just charge forward. But if you need to get in the habit of doing that, so you choose what you want, make it clear in your mind, write it down ideally, because that's going to help you make it clearer. Picture yourself as that person. This is really important. You need to picture yourself as that person. Make it clear. Be that person in your mind. And as you start to feel that, then you'll start to move that forward. And that's where, I said, if you're not taking that action, it's because you're seeing some other future. So this is where you need to choose what you want. This is why choosing what you want is really what you want. So really important. So the steps are: choose what you want and imagine yourself as the person that has already done it.
Thank you for being part of the Share.Care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes, for others and for you.